This is the plaintiff, Catherine Teresa Hamilton. She says she brought her car to the defendant's garage to get her transmission fixed, and it took around 3 weeks longer than promised to be repaired. The defendant said he'd pay for her rental car, but he hasn't, and she's suing him for the $4,302.83 she's owed. This is the defendant, Nelson Valdez. He says he never agreed to pay for the plaintiff's rental car, but he does admit there was a problem with the first transmission he installed. You can't tell if a transmission's good before putting it in. He replaced the bad one with a good one, didn't charge her labor, and has done everything he can for this ungrateful woman. He's accused of blowing a transmission.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff claims that she brought her car to the defendant for a transmission problem. The guy kept the car for 3 weeks, and she says she was entitled to a rent-a-car, didn't get one. But the defendant says no way, he never promised this woman anything like that. It's the case of blowing a transmission.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ms. Hamilton, you took your car to get a new transmission to the defendant's shop. And what did they do?
Well, basically, I paid $3,500, and at the first time
for a rebuilt transmission.
Back. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Valdez, what did you do to the car in August? A rebuilt transmission?
Judge Beyond, with all due respect, I didn't do anything to the car. I'm just representing the company because I work for them now. But I have all the story and a sworn statement on your desk there. They fixed the transmission the first time, put a rebuilt transmission in the car, and they came back 10 days later, and we fixed it again and didn't charge her anything for the second time. And then
here's the thing. So, so you have the car then from August 17th to August 27th, and Ms. Hamilton pays you the $3,500. She assumes that she's got a working car. But what happens by the end of September?
Well, after several times having the check engine light coming on, we took it back and said, we have a major problem here. It's not working correctly. And they had that car from 9/25 until 11/8. And
why so long, Mr. Valdez? That's a really long time. Why did you have the car so long?
It is a long time. You're absolutely correct. However, the first transmission came in, it wasn't done properly. The job was not completed bad. There's a wiring harness on the side of the transmission that if you run with a bad transmission, it blows the wiring harness as well. So that took extra time because we didn't know nothing about the wiring harness until we had to get back inside the transmission a second time.
Okay, so you buy your transmission from a third party. The party you picked gave you a bad transmission. It's
That's
installed
correct.
And no one knows it until later. I hear what you're saying, and I know that can happen because I get lawsuits like this all the time. So why did it take so long anyway? Why isn't it a week to fix that problem? Why is it, 6 weeks?
Yeah, Your Honor, you can't fix a transmission in a week ever. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never...
You fixed it in 10 days the first time. You're right, 10 days. Why did it take, instead of 10 days, why did it take 6 weeks?
That I can't answer. I wasn't the mechanic, man. I'm just representing the company.
Yeah, well, that's a really bad circumstance because you left her without a car that time. Now, Ms. Hamilton, when you turned the car in, you end up renting a car. You speak to someone at their facility. Who was the person you spoke to who said they would who was it that told you, we'll pay for your rental car? We feel so bad this happened.
Their office manager, Gina.
Gina Caldwell.
Their office manager, Gina, yes. And there is a letter stating to that effect in my paperwork.
Right. So Ms. Caldwell writes a letter saying, I was told by Ken that he would pay the rental since the vehicle was here for so long and not repaired on time. That's your former employee. I realize they sent you in here to hold the bag. I got that. You weren't around when but you are the only guy I can ask. So why is Ms. Caldwell saying that?
Welcome back to the People's Court. The defendant says the nerve of this plaintiff, he did an excellent job fixing her transmission, and she's just an ingrate. She says she was double-crossed. Let's go back into the courtroom.
Why is your employee, who's an agent of the company and authorized to speak on your behalf, saying that not only did he say that, but that's exactly what I told Miss Hamilton.
I don't know why she said that to her because Ken never authorized it. That's all I can tell you.
Well, she says Ken said that, and this lady ends up, how much did you spend on a rental car? Because 6 weeks is so long. You don't have an answer for me on why it took you guys 6 weeks?
That I can't answer, but $4,000 for a rent-a-car?
No, the actual rental car was $2,259.09, and I see the receipts are from Enterprise. It's $30 a day. That's why you can't keep the lady's car 6 weeks, you know, because that's a problem. And it was a particular problem in this case. Ms. Hamilton, I'm very sorry to hear about your loss. When was it that your husband passed away? In the middle of all this?
October 6th.
Okay.
Yes,
In the middle of all this stuff, she's dealing with this. She ends up getting, because she was told that your company would pay for it, she calls Enterprise and they're like, we're going to report the car stolen because you haven't returned it. And it was such a mess over something that was really simple. It's inexcusable to keep the car 6 weeks to change a transmission. It's just, you know, it shouldn't have happened. Someone dropped the ball. And so who should be responsible to eat those damages? You think it's going to be Ms. Hamilton, who ends up getting a call saying she's going to be arrested for car theft when her husband had just passed away? You think it's not going to be Ms. Hamilton? I can tell you that. Ms. Hamilton, what's the rest of your lawsuit about? What is the other $2,043.74?
Well, basically, when my husband and we just moved to Florida. To Brooksville.
Where were you from? Are you from Buffalo?
I'm from Michigan.
You're from Michigan? It sounds like my Buffalo relatives. Go ahead. Midwest.
Anyway, we decided that, you know, it would be, now that we were going to have the transmission fixed, we should be able to use that car for several years. And that wasn't the case.
Okay, but I understand you don't want to eat the loss of the rental car. So that I get. But the additional loss of use of the car and inconvenience, court is about making you whole, not about, you know, ching ching, let the cash register ring. It's about making sure that you, who are the person who doesn't have any fault here, are able to get from the folks who do have fault, because you know, I understand that it wasn't intentional, but it's their transmission that they put in that was faulty. And it's their, you know, she ate the rental car in the beginning, of course, because she has to in the first time around. It only takes 10 days, I know, because you did it in 10 days before. It could be shorter than that, but anyway, you did it in 10 days before. And then instead of having it 10 days, they end up having it for 6 solid weeks. You shouldn't have to pay for that. You should be able to have a rental car. You should be able to have wheels. You should be able to go shopping and do whatever it is you need to do, and especially during such a traumatic time. So if I order them to pay the rental car fees, then you are whole, right? You don't also get the loss of, you know, the inconvenience and loss of the car because I'm making them pay for it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to order them to pay you every penny of the Enterprise rent-a-car. That's $2,259.09, plus your court costs, of course, in having to bring this lawsuit. And that's my verdict. Good luck, folks.
So the plaintiff gets the cost of the rental car back, but that's it. Mr. Valdez, the defendant, let me ask you how you feel about I know you surprised the car had so many problems, aren't you? I'm sure of that.
Well, I didn't have nothing to do with the transaction. I know that Judge Bion's always been a fair person. We follow her here in Tampa, so whatever she says, I go by.
Very good for you. Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Hamilton, let me ask you, you're going to get the rental car back, but the fee for that, but that's it, okay? How do you feel about that?
Well, hey, I just could not rely on that car anymore. I mean, it just, with the loss of my husband, and I'm in a new place with nobody to fall back on, so I couldn't, I had to get rid of it.
Well, I think everybody understands that, and we're sorry for the loss of your husband. I'm sorry you couldn't get any more, but you're getting the rental car money, a little over $2,200. Thank you very much. Good luck with your new car.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's see what the judges have to say. Here's another session of After the Verdict with Judge Millian and Judge John.
Well, in this case, it sounds like Mr. Valdez drew the short straw over at the shop and had to come in and represent on it and then gamely explained their position. But certainly, as a judge, when you have somebody coming in a situation like this who says an employee of the shop who gave you a plausible explanation that, hey, we're going to cover your rental car, and then they back it up with an affidavit from that person saying,
Honestly,
I was told they were
right.
going to cover it.
Even if she didn't have that affidavit, think about it, right?
Yeah.
6 weeks?
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Imagine if she can afford to be without a car for 6 weeks.
Oh, it was a catastrophe. And
yeah.
at the worst time
so
of her life.
So if it's 10
God bless
days,
her.
it's 10 days. If they had just fixed it in 10 days, she would have had a car by the time her husband had passed away, and she would have, instead of having to receive phone calls saying they're going to report it stolen and all the other
and you're going to hold an employer accountable for something that's plausible like that in the course and scope of the work of the employee. It's not like Regina Caldwell told her, we're going to give you free ice cream for the rest of your life. She said, no, we're going to give you a car to cover the time that you're out of a car.
And she speaks for them. She's their agent. So they're stuck with whatever she says,
exactly.
To the customers.
And rental car fees can accumulate.
Well, it was $30 a day. They accumulate, and you spend 6 weeks fixing the car.
Long
that was really
long time to be with no transportation.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I just rented my first apartment. What should I take pictures of when I move in? And should I send them to my landlord? Won't that be starting out on the wrong foot with him? That is a fantastic question. No, you will not be starting out on the wrong foot. You need to go through that apartment and take pictures of any damage. That's what you're looking for. Damage, because what you want to show is that when you move out, that was pre-existing damage and the landlord can't dock you for it. If you show it to the landlord and say, look, I've just taken the pictures to show you what's already damaged, he should not get upset. That establishes the ground rules for the tenancy.